Hello, and welcome to the first official module of NailIB's business management course. In this module, we'll be making an introduction to this idea of business management and gain an understanding for what a business organization is and what the business environment is. So let's dive right in. So what is the goal of a business? Well, you see that the goal of a business there isn't actually to make a profit. And you might be wondering why. Well, the truth is that some businesses, particularly charities and non-for-profit organizations, don't actually aim to make money. Instead, the overarching goal, the thing that connects all businesses, is that they want to meet the needs and wants of individuals and organizations. So needs and wants are different. To survive, we need all the basics: our food, our water, our clothing, and our shelter. And many businesses provide for our needs. For example, residential construction companies, water providers, or clothes manufacturers. Other businesses provide for our wants, and these are things such as luxury handbags. Religious organizations, charities, clubs, etc. all provide services or products that people need or want, and in that sense, all these organizations are businesses too. Businesses are wide and varied, so some businesses will focus only on, for example, producing crops or extracting minerals from the earth. And these businesses that deal with raw materials, we say, work in the primary sector. We have some businesses that manufacture a product, whether a toy or a shovel, and we say they work in the secondary sector. We also have some businesses that provide a service, and these businesses don't produce anything. And these businesses don't produce anything tangible, anything that can be physically touched. Instead, what they do provide is some kind of value through a process, such as retail workers selling things, a medical examination, or an Uber ride that takes you from one place to another. These are services. Because of how big the business world is, you end up with some businesses that focus only on one activity. Then you have other businesses that engage in multiple activities, ranging from production all the way to sales, and it largely depends on the size of the business itself. However, regardless of each business's individual circumstances, a common trend across all businesses is that all businesses involve a three-step production process. Firstly, they input some kind of resource, they process it by adding value, and they produce some kind of output, whether a good or a service. And all this is done to meet the demands of individuals or organizations. The result is this flowchart model here. So usually a business starts with some kind of combination of these four elements: your human resources, your physical resources, your financial resources, and your enterprise. And we'll touch on what these mean in a tiny bit. What happens is that these inputs are put through a process that adds value to these raw inputs, which we call a production process, to produce in the end either a good or a service. In terms of goods, you can think of it as being raw materials being processed in a factory and reforged into a car. That's the production of a good. And that is a process that is adding value to the raw material that will sell for money. In this fashion, the role of a business is to add value to an input and is rewarded for it by generating a desired output, which in turn generates a sale or revenue. Expanding on this, many activities or organizations that most people would not consider a business nonetheless operate under many business principles. All organizations must have human, physical, financial resources to operate. Thus, many religious organizations, such as churches, mosques, synagogues, all have elements of a business. Other organizations, such as charities, are in a certain sense also businesses, as they require all these inputs. They add value to it, and they generate an output. To break down each of these components, let's start with our inputs. We have four broad categories of resource inputs. The first one is our human input, which is having the right quality and quantity of people to make a product or to provide a service. All businesses, even highly automated ones, still require human input, even if it's just one person overlooking all the machinery at a factory. Other businesses might require many individuals, often with different skill sets and bringing in different values to the business. Next, you have your physical resources, which involves having the right quality and quantity of materials, machinery, and land space required to make a product or provide a service. Even internet businesses, when you think about it, require some office space or a computer. Then you have your financial resources, which requires the right quality and quantity of cash and other forms of money required to make the product or service work. Finally, you need enterprise. And enterprise is the least tangible input, it's the least observable factor, but it is crucially important for all businesses. It's talking about the originality of the business idea and the will to see other elements of the business become functioning and ideally thriving. It's about seeing a gap in the market and creating a business to fulfill that gap, to meet individual and organizational needs and wants that are not currently met. These all count as forms of enterprise, and these basic ideas that form the foundation of the business are crucial to helping the business succeed. When we consider production processes, we have two prominent forms of production processes. The first is a capital-intensive process. The term capital here refers to machinery. And so a capital-intensive process uses a large proportion of land or machinery relative to other outputs, especially labor. A classic example is a factory with a large amount of machinery making something. On the other hand, you have your labor-intensive processes, and this involves large proportions of human labor relative to other inputs, especially in relation to land or machinery. And these processes are often low skill, such as factory workers in developing countries, but they can also involve some highly skilled employees, such as teaching staff at a university. These are labor-intensive production processes. Ultimately, what we generate is this product output. Product outputs can be categorized as either a good or a service. So if we're talking about goods, we're talking about tangible products, things that we can touch, produced in the primary and secondary sectors. And in the next few modules, we'll talk about what these sectors mean. If we're looking at a service, we're talking about intangible products, products that you can't touch, that are produced in the tertiary and quaternary sectors. To give an example of this, a service might be a karate class, a medical examination, after customer care. There is no physical product, but there is a service, and these are intangible elements that still add value to a product. So to summarize, a business is an organization that inputs resources, processes it through a production process that adds value, and generates the output of either a good or a service, which often results in sales or revenue. That concludes this first module. See you all soon.